As the film begins, we see a Chinese chef named Gao preparing mouth-watering dishes. Although his restaurant is small, it is tidy and spotless, a testament to his passion for his craft. However, Gao harbors a painful memory. In his childhood, his father left him in the care of another chef so he could learn the art of cooking. Gao dreams of becoming a renowned chef, a goal he couldn't achieve as a child. His father, once a respected chef, is now a master chef. But despite Gao's admiration for his father's skill, he harbors resentment towards him. Gao spent his childhood feeling abandoned, and although he missed his father never knew. On the other hand, Gao's father was content that people didn't know he had a son, a fact that saddened Gao even more. The story then shifts to a young, talented, and charismatic chef named Paul. Paul used to cook for wealthy families and dreamed of opening a restaurant in his home country to honor his father. Leaving behind foreign lands and other opportunities, he returns to his homeland. One day, Paul visits a fish dealer and asks to see a large fish. But the dealer refuses to sell it to him, saying he had already promised it to Gao. When Gao arrives to buy the fish, the dealer sells it to him, infuriating Paul, who glares at Gao with envy and frustration. The fish dealer, noticing the tension, decides to divide the fish between them to prevent an argument. However, Paul and Gao continue to stare at each other with hostility. Next, we see the grand opening of Paul's stunning new restaurant. It's a stylish, immaculate space, and it's located directly across from Gao's humble establishment. Gao's friends are worried that Paul's restaurant will attract their customers, and indeed, soon enough, all the patrons flock to the new restaurant to sample its offerings. In an effort to help Gao, his friends suggest offering a discount, which successfully draws customers back to his restaurant. This angers Paul's friends, who confront Gao and his team, saying, "What's your problem? You can't handle a little competition?" Eventually, the rivalry between Gao and Paul escalates to the point where they decide to settle things through a cooking competition. At first, both are reluctant to participate, but when they recognize each other from the fish market, they agree to the challenge. The table is set with a large fish, the very same fish they had fought over. Paul goes first, expertly filleting the fish and removing the bones with speed and precision, impressing the audience. Then it's Gao's turn. He handles the fish with equal skill, leaving behind only the skin, showing his finesse. Both chefs receive praise for their techniques, and the crowd is divided in admiration. A chairman overseeing the competition announces an upcoming International Chef Challenge contest and suggests that both chefs participate to prove who is truly the superior chef. Both Gao and Paul agree to the challenge. In a later scene, Paul takes to social media, saying, "I used to cook in France. Coming back to China, I realize people here still rely on traditional methods." It's a subtle jab at Gao, who becomes visibly annoyed by the remark. Everyone knows that the two chefs will soon face off in the ultimate competition. If Gao and Paul win the upcoming challenge, they'll advance to the final competition. Even if they lose, they'll still get the chance to meet the master chef who's judging the event, a master chef who, unbeknownst to Paul, is none other than Gao's estranged father. One day, Paul's friend visits Gao's restaurant and extends an invitation for Gao and his friends to dine at Paul's establishment. Curious, Gao and his friends accept and go to Paul's restaurant. However, instead of Paul, it's his friend who serves them a dish. The meal appears to be a simple combination of a fried egg and a garnish, but the taste is surprisingly unique. After tasting it, Gao realizes Paul's cooking style is very different and progressive. Unable to hold back, Gao storms into the kitchen and angrily confronts Paul. "What are you trying to prove with this fancy dish?" he demands. "That you're a master chef?" Paul stays calm and replies, "Why don't we have a cooking showdown? Let's see who can make the tastier meat dish." Gao accepts the challenge. They each prepare a meat dish, and when Paul finishes, he tells Gao, "Now I'll show you how to make this same dish using my own method." Paul prepares it in record time, and when Gao inspects it, he can't find any flaws. Realizing that Paul's technique is advanced, Gao leaves the restaurant, feeling frustrated. Later, someone informs Gao that his father wants to see him. Gao reluctantly goes to meet him. "Why are you calling me now?" he asks. "You've never acknowledged me as your son." The master chef replies, "I kept our relationship hidden so that the world wouldn't think you succeeded just because of me. I wanted you to have the chance to earn your own place in the International Chef Challenge." Gao responds bitterly, "I don't need your help. You weren't there when I needed you. I'll prove I can do this on my own." With that, he leaves, unwilling to trust a word his father says. The next day, the International Chef Challenge begins. The stage is set, and both Gao and Paul are ready. When the timer starts, Paul is assigned a dessert to prepare, while Gao has to make a chicken dish. They both put in their best effort, and Paul finishes his dish ahead of time. Gao completes his dish just before time runs out. When the dishes are tasted, the judges are impressed by both. The flavors are so close in quality that they score the dishes equally. However, one judge announces, "While both dishes are superb, I was particularly impressed by Paul's presentation." With that, Paul is declared the winner. Paul is ecstatic, but Gao, disappointed by the loss, avoids going home. Instead, he spends days keeping himself occupied with video games, trying to escape the disappointment. One day, the chef who raised Gao in his father's absence visits him. "Victory and defeat are part of life," he tells Gao. "Just because you didn't win today doesn't mean you won't win tomorrow." Though Gao is reluctant, he eventually agrees to return home and start training again, determined to come back stronger. Meanwhile, Paul celebrates his victory at his restaurant with his friends. One of his friends suggests, "Paul, why don't you let your friend represent you in the next competition? She's been by your side for a long time, trust her. She could bring honor to your restaurant." Paul replies, "She's a good friend, I won't deny that. But she doesn't know how to cook, so how could she represent my restaurant on an international stage?" As the conversation continues, it becomes clear that his friends have ulterior motives. One of Paul's friends approaches him with 2 cups of soup and asks, "Paul, can you tell which one has more salt?" Paul falls silent, unable to answer. He has a condition that affects his sense of taste. Realizing his vulnerability, Paul's friend reveals his true intentions. "Did you really think I was your friend?" he sneers. "I was only using you to get into the international competition. I kept your secret for so long, don't you think you owe me? Now, I'm done pretending. I'm going to enter the competition myself." As Paul sits there in shock, he learns that his so-called friends have been plotting against him. They plan to sell his restaurant and split the money to start a new life. Paul, devastated by this betrayal, walks out of his restaurant, heartbroken. That night, Paul sits outside, drinking alone in despair. Gao happens to pass by and sees him. Sitting down next to him, Gao asks, "Why are you sitting out here all dejected? You won, you should be celebrating." Paul replies, "Yeah, I won the competition, but I lost something much more important." He pauses, then gestures to a poster on the wall. "See that man? The master chef on that poster? He's my idol. I wanted to be like him." Gao looks at the poster and smiles faintly. "That man," he says quietly, "is my father. You think he's a great man, but you don't know the whole story." As the two rivals sit together, sharing their burdens, they begin to understand each other in a way they never had before. Gao takes a deep breath and says, "Let me tell you something, my father isn't the kind-hearted man you think he is." He begins to share his past with Paul. "He abandoned me when I was a child. He thought I was holding him back from his career, so he left me to be raised by another chef. I spent my entire teenage years without him." At first, Paul laughs, thinking Gao is joking. "You're just kidding, right? Stop messing around." But Gao's serious expression convinces him otherwise. "It's the truth," Gao says quietly. Paul, sensing his friend's pain, says, "Don't be sad. What can we do about it now?" Gao grins and says, "Well, we can throw bottles at that poster." They both laugh and start hurling empty bottles at the poster of Gao's father, venting their frustrations together. In that shared moment, their rivalry dissolves, and a genuine friendship begins to form. For the first time, they feel like true allies. When Paul returns to his restaurant later, he's shocked to find his friends negotiating a sale of the place behind his back. "What's going on here?" he demands. "How dare you try to sell my restaurant without my permission?" One of his friends smirks and says, "Fine, Paul. Then tell us, who are you planning to take as your partner to the international cooking competition? In this next round, you can't compete alone, you need a teammate. Will it be one of us?" Paul, unfazed, replies, "I already know who my partner will be, someone who actually deserves it." He then turns to Gao and says, "I'm taking him." His former friends are furious. One sneers, "Remember, Paul, this decision will ruin your career." In response, Paul just laughs, gives him a light smack on the head, and tells them to leave. Once they're gone, the chef who mentored Gao approaches Paul and asks, "Are you sure about this, Paul? You really want to partner with Gao?" Paul places a hand on Gao's shoulder and says confidently, "Yes. Gao's the real deal." With the decision made, they begin preparing for the competition together. They agree to share their expertise. Paul will teach Gao modern cooking techniques, while Gao will introduce Paul to his traditional culinary methods. "Don't worry," Gao tells Paul one day during training, "if you still struggle with tasting, I'll help you sharpen your palate." He shows Paul some techniques for identifying flavors, while Paul demonstrates advanced methods for speeding up food prep and plating. As they train together, cooking, laughing, and even dancing around the kitchen, their friendship grows stronger. They spend hours each day perfecting their skills, creating new dishes, and learning from each other. By the end, they've developed a seamless partnership. Finally, the day of the second international cooking competition arrives. Working together like a well-oiled machine, they prepare an exquisite dessert in record time. When the judges taste it, they're blown away. "We've never had anything like this," one judge exclaims. Gao and Paul win the competition, proving that teamwork really does make a difference. As the saying goes, union is strength. With their victory, they move on to the third and final round of the international competition, ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead, this time, as true friends and partners. In the final round of the competition, Gao is set to face off against none other than the master chef, his own father. Before the competition begins, Paul turns to Gao and says, "I think you can win this. Go out there and show him what you've got." Gao hesitates, replying, "No, Paul. You're the better chef. You know all the modern techniques. You should be the one competing." But Paul shakes his head. "It's not about that. Look, I've already fulfilled my father's dream by opening my own restaurant. Now it's your turn. Your father always wanted to see you become a great chef. Go out there, cook for him, and show him just how skilled you are." Moved by Paul's encouragement, Gao agrees and thanks him. As the third and final competition begins, both Gao and his father start preparing their dishes. Just as Gao begins, a wave of memories from his childhood flashes through his mind, moments when his father left him, the taunts he endured from other kids. Lost in thought, he's suddenly jolted back to the present when his father splashes water on his face and says, "Get focused. Start cooking." Gao takes a deep breath and begins to cook. Meanwhile, his father, the master chef, is creating a spectacular dessert. The presentation is breathtaking, featuring a fiery flower centerpiece that amazes the judges with its taste and creativity. Finally, it's Gao's turn to present his dish. He approaches his father with a simple bowl of noodles. His father tastes them, and a look of surprise crosses his face. These are the same noodles he once scolded Gao for not being able to cook properly. But today, they are perfectly made, bursting with flavor. Unable to resist, his father begins eating the noodles eagerly. He looks up at Gao with pride and says, "Well done, my son. You've perfected it." His voice catches with emotion, and for the first time, he openly acknowledges Gao as his son. The audience, noticing the family resemblance and the emotions on stage, realizes that Gao and the master chef are indeed father and son. Both father and son's dreams are fulfilled in that moment. Gao has finally earned his father's approval, and his father has witnessed his son's success. In the closing scene, we see Gao and Paul back at their restaurant, working together as partners. Their restaurant is more popular than ever, drawing even more customers than before. People can't stop praising their food, and the restaurant is filled with energy and excitement. The movie ends on this triumphant note, with Gao and Paul standing side by side, united by friendship and their shared passion for cooking.